So I get back in the body, and I'm like way deep inside, and it felt like I could talk through a megaphone out to the mouth, and it felt like there were like funnels from the ears into me where I could hear, and I could feel that I was trying to push back into this body, and I was going, no, 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 I don't want in the body, because it felt like putting on cold, wet, disgusting clay about as tight as a diver's wetsuit, and I didn't want to go in. But I was percolating back into it anyway. And I eventually got to the point where I realized that the radiologist and the rad tech were at the back of the room with films up on the view box, looking at them, and the radiologist was drawing a little map for the surgeon of where to cut. And I said, I passed out. And to me it sounded like I'm yelling through a megaphone out to this little mouth that's going, I passed out. The radiologist turns around and looks at me and says, are you all right? I said, no. So the rad tech went to the door and yelled out in the hallway for a nurse. The nurse came in, put a blood pressure cuff on me, this arm, and started pumping it up. And the radiologist says, do you know who you are? I said, oh yeah, I know who I am. I know way more about who I am than you could even imagine. She says, do you know where you are? I said, mammo room. And to me it was like so hard to get mammo room out of this mouth, She says, do you know who I am? I said, you look familiar, but I can't place you. And that's when she knew I'd been unconscious. And I think I heard the nurse saying 60 over palp and rising, which would have been my blood pressure. So they let me sit there for a while, and my blood pressure did come back up. And I got to the point where I could talk, and use the body. It felt like, did you ever see the movie where like somebody's inside a robot or something and they're trying to move these robotic arms and legs? That's what I felt like I was doing with this body. And I remember saying, oh, it was because I haven't eaten. They don't let you eat after midnight the night before. This was probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'd never gone that long without eating. So I probably just passed out because I hadn't eaten. So they went ahead with surgery, which surprised me. They had somebody with me. They had a physician with me the whole time, from that moment till the surgery was over, and then they had a nurse with me back in my room in the hospital. But they didn't leave me alone for a second after that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Sorry for getting emotional, but the body doesn't like to hear she died. If you've ever read near-death experience stories or ever heard about them, or everybody's heard something about a near-death experience story. The one thing that my story and their stories have in common is that they are unique. Just like each one of our human lives is completely unique, so is each one of our afterlives. And while there is a specific process that we go through where we transform from what I call human mode or human level of perception up to a spiritual level of perception, how we get there, there are steps that are set. We don't necessarily go through them in order. The content of those steps is completely individualized for us. So no two people will have an identical near-death experience or death experience, because it is specifically designed with you in mind to get you what you need when you need it with the least amount of trauma and the most degree of comfort. What humans think of as death, Source thinks of as recycling. And that's what we do. Now, I participated in my afterlife experience from multiple levels, and I kind of tried to give you the flavor of that. At times I felt like I had the human perspective where I was like really surprised by what was going on, and other times I was going, oh yeah, I remember that. That's the spiritual perspective. and I go back and forth, or have them at the same time. And then as I got higher and higher levels of spiritual perspective, like merging into source and everything, I still had all those underlying levels of perception that kind of went along with it. I don't know if when you die for good you lose all that or not, but that's the way it was for me. Because that's the way it was for me, I had the unique opportunity to compare and contrast the various levels of perspective on death and the afterlife. And I'm sure you've heard that near-death experiencers sometimes come back with gifts. You know, their gift might have been they're cured from their cancer, they're psychic, they may be a healer. You know, most experiencers who actually go into the afterlife and have a deep enough experience do come back with a gift. My gift was memory. I crammed for the exam, and I remember far more than anybody else I've ever, read about or heard about. And I've been trying to impart that information since I started this mission a few years ago. But this all happened in 1994. It took me until December of 1995 to know it was a near-death experience. I thought something medical had happened to me, and I kept trying to get my doctors to give me a diagnosis, and they kept saying, oh, you hallucinated. But in December of 1995, I saw the movie Saved by the Light, the Daniel Brinkley story. I saw it on TV, and as soon as I watched it, I went, that's it, buddy, that's what happened to me. I knew I didn't hallucinate it. And that kind of opened a whole world for me. But the world that opened was memories, remembering the experience. And the more I remembered it, the more it came up. And I was very, very ill in 2001, and a lot of the memories came back then. I started writing them down, and that's what's in my books. It's the memories from, and I go back into the light and I relive the experience, and then I come out of it and I start typing it up. So that's how my gift of memory works. In order to understand what happens after we die, you have to get out of your human perspective. Humans are at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of ability to see clearly, ability to understand. Humans are animals, and they're not all that more sophisticated than dogs and cats and horses and pigs and cows. They have a higher brain capacity that gives them the ability to be more cunning. The intelligence of the human comes from the light being soul inside. The light beings that I met in the light, and that I was in the light. What we do is we have the ability to reduce part of our energy, put it into a human animal. It's called a soul when it's in a human animal. That's what humans call it. But it's a completely separate being than the animal. The animal's physical matter, manifestation. It's born, lives, dies. It isn't, quote, real. Any more than a character in a book is real, or a character in a movie is real, or a character in a virtual reality game is real. It's a level of awareness that we choose to experience because it's so different than our natural spiritual state.